which is the
that Facebook or
That's YouTube's.
I'll check on Facebook because he said there's no one on Facebook.
Yeah, work.
It's working? Can you just move it?
Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Bismillah. So basically, the point of that was, it seems like two contradictory statements, but that shows you that hayba, waqar, these kind of things, reverence, presence, being significant is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not everyone that appears to have it really has it. And these things are quite subjective, of course. And it's important to have the right perspective about them. Everyone's subjective about what makes presence, what makes, someone be important, be famous. So since everyone's subjective, you got to make sure that you have the right perspective. That at least your subjectivity is in line with these objective facts. The truth, what's important, what's not, so on and so forth. He passed away in the year 620. So that makes him how old when he passed away? I told you already. What did you say?
Who's 550?
Yeah, 570 something, 550 something, 575. Fine answer? What happens if you're wrong? Let's find out. I mean, I'll think of something. Any takers here? It's like the Price is Right. You gotta get the closest without going over.
553.
560.
I think 540.
No, I think
541.
All right, 541. Good job.
Oh,
Yeah, 541.
541 and then it's 6.
I don't have it today, but inshallah next week.
79.
79. Is the calculator?
Yeah, wait, it was 79.
well.
Yeah, so he died at 79.
Wait, what year did he die?
620. He was 79.
541. Okay.
And he died in, like we said, in Dimashq, because where he had settled at that time, and they say the entirety of the city followed him.
Where did
Dimashq, Damascus. And the entire city was present at the janazah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, and it's definitely an interesting perspective to see how these scholars live, to hear these details. A lot of times you will see overlapping details about like their presence and their soft-heartedness, but you need to hear that over and over. You need to hear that Imam Malik and Abu Hanifa and Ibn Qudamah and Ibn Taymiyyah saw an orphan then cried and were told fear Allah and then cried. We need to hear that over and over. So that way, when someone tells it to you, you may not necessarily cry, but you're definitely not going to brush it off. Right? So it may be repetitive, especially if you read a lot of these biographies. They're very similar in the descriptions of these people, because that's how the scholars were, right? People who are close to knowledge, people who make an effort to learn what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants of them, people who make an effort to learn what the Quran says, what their creator is telling them, they're naturally going to have these characteristics. So a lot of times we're far from them, where we can't imagine being moved by just a simple statement or something this small. But that's from the distance of our hearts from the source. That's from a distance of our experience from actually living the revelation. So the more we do that, the more soft-hearted we become, and the closer we get to fulfilling our purpose. So that was the biography of Ibn Qudamah, very briefly. And in the next 20 minutes or so, we'll finish chapter 1. What was chapter 1 about? How many blank silences before I go home? No, I'm joking, guys. But definitely try to retain. We're finishing chapter 1. What was it about?
Oh,
No.
biography.
Biography is all the way at the end of the book. I said that earlier. There's no penalty for wrong answers, guys. Feel free to guess. It's just to keep it interactive. If I'm blabbing for an hour and a half, I'm gonna fall asleep. So I can't imagine you guys. Keep it a two-way street. It's a lot better.
Did we do chapter 1 this class or last class?
The last class we did half of it. The other half is here.
Why they ask him to?
That was the introduction. It was before the first chapter. Why he wrote the book, that was for Muqaddimah.
I remember mentioning the dunyas where Jannah people wish to read.
Okay, so that was the first section of the first chapter. The first chapter is Al-Mubadara ila al-Amal. Al-Mubadara ila al-Amal, hurrying towards doing deeds. Don't put it on the back burner. Don't say when I'm 25. Don't say when I get married. Don't say when I turn 40. Don't say when I make Hajj. Don't put these meaningless checkpoints that we do for ourselves all the time. First of all, you're not guaranteed to reach them. Second of all, why? Why these checkpoints? What makes them significant? Do we want to enjoy the cream of the crop and give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the dregs, give him the leftovers? Is that how we view Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So when I get married, because I had my fun. When I turn 40, when I make Hajj, because that will forgive all the sins of the fun that I had. This kind of attitude, presenting the least and the most furthest from sincerity of actions to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, creator, makes no sense. So he wrote the first chapter calling it al-mubadara ila amal, hurrying towards work, hurrying towards deeds. Don't leave it on the back burner. And the first section, the first subtitle under that was ad-dunya fursa faghtanimha. The dunya is an opportunity, so seize it. And he spoke about how the people of the hereafter, they all wish they were here. And they all regret, even the people of Jannah. And of course, that's before they enter Jannah, because after they enter Jannah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make me and you and all of our families and all Muslims of the people of Jannah. Ameen. Once they enter, there's no more regret. There's no more, I wish I could have. It's just endless bliss. But as they are entering, they regret, saying, if we had one more tasbih in our account, one more rak'ah, one more day fasting, one more ayah of the Quran that we read, one more smile on the face of our brother or sister accordingly, then we could have raised a rank. We would have been entering this door from one level higher. What does one level higher mean? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that one level looks up the way you look up to the stars. That's how far it is. It's significant. So, hurrying towards deeds, realizing that the dunya is an opportunity that everyone wishes they had. The people of the grades, the people of the hereafter, all the same. And not only that, he says it's not, he continues, remember, he says, not just talking about death and those who wish to come back, saying the health is the wish of the ill, and free time is the wish of the busy, right? As the saying goes in Arabic, that the, I don't remember the exact saying, but maybe someone could recall it, where the wellness is a crown, al-afiyah taj ala ru'us al, what is it? Anyone? Al-afiyah taj ala ru'us al-istihah la yaraha illa al-marda. I don't that's how it goes. That the wellness is a crown on the head of those who are healthy, that no one sees except those who are sick. Right? Likewise with everything. The person who's busy, the person who doesn't have wealth, looks at the people who has it and they see something that you may not notice. So don't be like that. Don't be blissfully or ignorantly or heedlessly rather unaware of the blessings we have and that we enjoy every single day and that so many others don't. These are tools. These are utilities to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and exact purpose. So that was the first section. The second section he calls Mithal al-Dunya wa ahliha, a metaphor of the dunya and its people. So this is what we're going to be looking at now. And he says, this is just an idea that I had. This is a metaphor, a story that I made up to give you an idea of what this dunya is like, this worldly life, and the people in it. And he says the example, the metaphor is like a group of people who embark on a journey on a ship. They come to an island in the middle of the ocean. And this island is known for precious gems. Has aquamarine, has jade, has rubies, has sapphires, has pearls. He mentions a bunch. And also has rocks, right? It's an island, so it has rocks, it has dust, it has random garbage as well, stuff that has no worth. So when they get off, they are told that you are going to stay on this island for 1 day. And your objective on this island is that you are being taken, this ship, why are they on the ship? They're on a journey to a king that invited them to his land. So that's why they're on the journey in the first place. And the captain of the ship who's taking them to the king tells them, you're on this island for 1 day. إن مقامكم بها يوم وليلة فاغتنموا مدتكم القصيرة فيما أمكنكم من أخذ هذه الجواهر الكثيرة. So take advantage of this day because the king wants you. He told us to stop here so that you can gather from these precious gems. You're here on a collecting mission for this king who's calling you to his land. And you'll only be here for a day and a night, 1 day, 24 hours. So he says, once the captain gives them this information, they split into groups. So pay attention to these metaphors. I'm sure you can already see what everything is. I'm going to ask you at the end, what is what? And see what you guys think and see how close you are to what he meant, because he's going to explain what he means by each group and each piece of the metaphor. So he says the first group, فَأَمَّا الْحَازِمُونَ فَأَسْرَعُوا إِلَى تِلْكَ الْجَوَاهِرِ يَتَلَقَّوْنَ مِنْهَا وَيَحْمِلُونَهُ إِلَى مَخَازِنِهِمْ في السفينة ويجدون ويجتهدون. There's a group that he calls al-hazimun, those who are determined. They have strong determination. They start looking, right? They start gathering. They start also filtering, he said. They're not looking for any gems. They want the biggest, they want the shiniest, they want the most, the one that has the most worth. And they're taking it back and forth to their stores on the ship. And they're filling. Every time they fill their hands or their bags or whatever, they put it in the ship and they go back for more. And they're trying really hard, he said. They're trying their best. فَإِذَا تَعِبُوا, when they get tired now, they remember what the captain said, you're here for one day. And then they remember the price and the worthiness of this, the worth of these gems. And how that they will have to return and show the king what they have gathered. So this is what helps them overcome tiredness. And if they get sleepy now, he says, the same thing happens. He says, فَذَهَبَ عَنْهُمْ لَذَّةُ النَّوْمِ وَالْكَرَى وَتَمَثَّلُوا. The pleasure or the delight of sleep is completely obliterated by this thought. We're only here for one night or one day. We have to return to the king. These gems are worth it, so on and so forth. And when he says when they get tired, فَذَهَبَ عَنْهُمْ لَذَّةُ النَّوْمِ وَالْكَرَى وَتَمَثَّلُوا. When they get tired and they remember this and it gets rid of the sleep, then they say this saying to themselves, عند الصباح يحمد القوم السرعة. In the morning, the people who will be praised are those who traveled by night. So people take a break at night, they go to sleep. In the morning, when they see how far the people who kept going said, forget it, it's like, don't take a break, they'll realize they already arrived. They're safe, they're comfortable, they're changing, they're selling their wares, they're seeing their family, whatever it may be. So they say, those guys, they were the men, right? They did it right. So this is what they're telling themselves. They're saying, if everyone's going to wake up tomorrow, and they'll say whoever kept going at night was the smart one, was the great one, they start praising them, we might as well be those people. Then he says group number 2 now. They are people who start to gather gems, and they take breaks at times. So they gather, they take breaks when they get tired. They're not like the first group who get tired and it's completely obliterated by these points that we mentioned in the beginning. No, they're people who, when they get tired, they take a break, they take a nap, and so on and so forth. And there's a third group now, he says, that don't even bother looking. Why? It's a tropical island. It's really pretty. They say, look, check out the palm trees. Look at the sand. It's so clear. I can see my hand under the water. Look at this tropical fish. I wonder what it tastes like. So one of them says it's quite sunny. So he puts a few palm trees over. The other guy says that's not stopping anything. So he props them up. The other guy says, well, I want a fancier hut than that. So they start building huts. And they start trading gems too. Like, hey, this one's worth 10 whatever's, right? They make up a currency maybe. Yeah, I'm embellishing the metaphor, by the way. So we could never then say all of this. So take it with a pinch of salt. You're completely at my mercy until I give you the book, right? So then you could verify what exactly the metaphor is. So the metaphor, the example I'm saying is that they start building, they start enjoying, they start trading. They really go far in enjoying what the island has to offer. By the way, the captain tells them at the start of their mission, the island is your hunting ground. This is where you're looking for gems, this entire island, right? This is where the king wants you to search up and down the island, except for one place. Him and Malik, the king's reserve. This is his own resort. In it is Harim al-Malik. It has his harem, right? His womenfolk. So you're not allowed to come close to it. That's his own private place on the island. It's specifically for him. He wants you to gather gems from everywhere else. Go wherever else you want. There's nowhere else that's restricted. That's the only circle that's restricted. So, and that leads us to the fourth group. So the third group, like we said, they didn't even bother looking. First group, what was their description? What did they do? They're determined. They're serious. They don't sleep. They fight off sleep. They fight off tiredness. The second group, they gather and they rest on it. And the third group doesn't gather in the first place. Doesn't even bother. Some of them trade. Some of them gather stuff. Some of them check out the island. Some of them eat, drink. Some of them build houses, even though they're only there for one day. And then there's now a fourth group who they're not just sufficing like the third group with building and eating and checking out the island. They say, why is this resort of the king off limits? There can only be one explanation. It has to be bumping. It has to be really nice out there. It can't be off limits except there's something really nice, right? This is the classic كل ممنوع مرغوب. Everything that is prohibited, everything that's forbidden, there's an enticement towards it. That's just human nature. Curiosity, greed, all these come into play. So they wonder, and they start getting close. Let's look at it from far. And then they get a little bit closer. Then they hear the sounds from inside. It sounds like a fun time. And then they get even closer to the very, very wall. And there's sights and there's sounds and there's scents. And they can't help it. There is no door, so they break through. Right? They break through and they spend the entire day on the entire day on the island in the king's resort. And he said, وَقَالُوا لَيْسَ لَنَا دَارٌ غَيْرُ هَذِهِ الدَّارِ. This is our home. We're here to enjoy these luxuries, to enjoy this, this resort, to enjoy this beautiful island. This is home. We're just gonna settle here. Like forget the rest of the journey. We are happy here. We like it here. And then at the end of the day, the captain announces it's time to go. We fulfilled the mission, time-wise, and everyone has to go. So he says, and at that point, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ حَصَّلُوا الْجَوَاهِرَ, for those who collected the gems, فَرَحَلُوا مُغْتَبِطِينَ بِبِضَائِعِهِمْ. They leave the island proud in their merchandise, proud in what they have gathered. They're very, very happy with what they have. They're very hopeful that this is going to be a fruitful day, that it's going to be rewarded, it's going to be praised. For the second group, those who gathered and rested, then they're shocked, he said. They're shocked that the time is up. And they're realizing that the time rested was wasted. They could have gathered more. They have some already, but they're realizing we could have got a little bit more. We spent a little bit too much time resting. And then he says, وَأَمَّا الْفِرْقَةُ الثَّالِثَةُ فَاشْتَدَّ جَزْعُهُمْ. So the second group, they're upset at resting. The third group now, he says, sorry, فَكَانُوا أَشَدَّ جَزْعًا وَأَعْظَمَ مُصِيبَةً. They're even worse in their shock. You know when you press the snooze alarm a little bit too many times, and then all of a sudden you need to get up in the next 45 seconds, or this is going to be a bad day? That's a bad shock. It's not worse than when you reach to press the snooze, and you should have gotten up an hour ago to be on time. That feeling's a lot worse, right? So I know a lot of you are students, you probably do that every day, but it's not a good feeling, right? And the older you get, the more significant your positions are, that feeling is a lot worse because the consequences are a lot worse. Now it won't be some, demerits or whatever school system that you have for punishment or some, father support that goes home or call to your parents. Now it could be docking your pay. Right now you're losing money that you need to fulfill your needs in everyday life. Or worse, you could be terminated. Now you're fired. Right, this is your third lateness. We don't need you here. I was like, well, I can get better. I can explain. Sorry, it's done. This is company policy, for example. It's a lot worse. So the feeling of, oh no, I gotta get up right now, that's stressful. Or I should have gotten up 5 minutes ago, that's stressful. But the worst is, I'm 2 hours over. There's no fixing this, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. That's the third group. They realize this is the worst. Now for the fourth group, he says, they're the worst. Because they got on the boat with the scents and the traces of the king's private luxuries on them. They have to go back to the king with the trace of the one place that they were not supposed to go. And they have to face him like that. So he says they're in the worst condition. And then they get to the city. And when they get to the city now, they are greeted by the people of the city. And the king is leading a procession of his soldiers, and they come to them as they're entering the city as their ship lands. And they say, and they are told by the people of the city, where is your merchandise? Come present. This is what you were called to do. This is what the king had invited you for. So what's up? What do you have to show for it? So he says, فَأَمَّا أَهْلُ الْجَوَاهِرِ, the people from the first group, they are showing their merchandise proudly. They are handing it over, and the king praises them. And he says, you have a special position with me today. You'll be in my private circle. You're going to be treated the treatment that I treat my guests. You're going to be fed, so on and so forth, right? All the luxuries, they're going to be at your disposal. There's going to be castles, there's going to be homes. Everything that you have, you can desire is going to be here for you. For the second group, they're now told, what do you have? Where's your merchandise? And they're presenting, so they're not in a very good situation compared to the first group, but they have something to present, right? So they're a little bit better off in that they have something to present, but they're not as happy. They don't have, he doesn't go off in the details that he goes off about the first group, that they're getting this and that, because obviously they're not going to be treated the same, but he says they have merchandise. The third group now, he actually skips the second group here, could be a typo, could be an issue in this edit, but he goes straight to the third group. The third group now says, we have nothing to show. We didn't gather anything. So they're told, وَيْحَكُمْ أَمَا كُنْتُمْ فِي مَعَادِنِ الْجَوْهَرِ. Weren't you on the island of gems? Like, it's not like they're hard to find. The island was known for them. That's why you went there. That's why you stopped there. Weren't you there? It's the island of gems. So it's not about difficulty. It's not like we couldn't find them. We didn't know what the gems were. None of these apply to you. So why not? And they say, there is no reason. There is no response. All of that is true. It was the island of gems. We knew exactly why we were there. We were told about our purpose. We were directed to what to collect and not to collect. We knew that there was some stones and some garbage and some valuable things in the kingdom. So they acknowledge that they have no excuse. And some of them answer, besides no excuse, they say, well, we were busy building homes. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it makes you tired. Another says we were gathering or trading with other valuable merchandise that we found valuable, leaves or fronds or whatever. So then he says, فَقِيلَ لَهُمْ تُبًّا لَكُمْ. May you be cursed for the lack of determination that you had, the lack of importance that you gave this task, and for the fact that these gems meant nothing to you. You were told they were worth a fortune, you were told they would be rewarded for gathering them, and they still meant nothing to you. None of that made a difference. So now you'll be given nothing. You have nothing to show, so you have nothing to be rewarded for. In fact, they'll be punished. And then now the third group. Sorry, so when they're told now you have nothing to show, so you'll have nothing and you'll be cursed, he said, فَعَضُّوا أَيْدِيَهُمْ نَدْنًا. They bite their hands in regret. Right? They're regretting their time spent on the island, and they cry out of regret, out of the time that they wasted, and they present their apologies, but they are not accepted. Now for the last group, the third group, they come to the king, he says, and they present themselves in front of him, like we said, with the sense and the signs of his private resort on them. It's clear that you were there. You can't hide it. So they are ashamed, and they are, they are drowning in despair. They know that they have no answer. They have nothing that will get them out of this bind. There is no excuse. On the island, they were saying, this is our home now. We like it here. But now all of a sudden, they're shocked to realize there's nothing to say and they're ashamed. So that thought, that fleeting thought, was completely gone now. So he, of course, the king takes them, and they are punished with the most severe punishment, and they are reprimanded with the most severe reprimand. Their stay is the worst, right? There's absolutely no reprieve for them, and there is no positive resolution to their story. So now he says, فَانْظُرْ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ إِلَى تَفَاوَتْ مَا بَيْنَ الْمَنْزِلَتَيْنِ. Look at what the difference is now. May Allah have mercy on you, just to say to the reader. At the difference between the levels and the groups. So he's going to go now and then describe some of it. Before he does it, what's the island? Raise your hands. Go ahead. What's your name? Aya. What's the island?
Dunya.
The dunya. You get 5 points because I don't have anything, but I usually bring candy. But next time, brothers, who's the first group? Sorry, back it up. The island is the dunya. Who's the captain? Raise your hands. Just because if you get it wrong, you can hop someone else off and change your question. That's why I say raise your hands. I only have a few questions. Guys, who's the captain of the ship? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? That's the metaphor. He's coming to tell you. He's the one who's going to show you what this journey is. He's the one who's connecting. He's the one who's the king's employee. He's telling you the king sent you here for this. I'm taking you to him. I'm showing you what you're supposed to do. That's a gem. That's garbage. Don't waste your time. Right? Don't go here. You're not allowed there. There's no gems there. There's no business for you there. That's stuff that will harm you. Who's giving you all that instruction? Without the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you wouldn't be able to do it. The prophets in general, true, but in this metaphor we're talking about, for us, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the captain of the ship. Who's the first group? The guided Muslim, right? And some scholars add in the story. They say that the first group, they stick to the captain on the island. They don't just go about. They say, "Come with us and show us." Right? So they're the guided Muslims, people who are not just Muslim, but they're caring about finding information, trying to find out exactly what Allah wants from us. Is this worth it? It looks like a gem. Captain tells them it is, but this one's even bigger and better, so they'll leave this one for that. While other people might say, "Hey, it's shiny." They might have a little bit of knowledge, and if they're both shiny, I'll just take whatever. This one looks better to me. So they may choose one that's less valuable. People who don't seek any knowledge whatsoever, they may be picking up rocks, right? They may be wasting their time with things that are not worthwhile, that are not even worship. So that's how important it is to stick to the captain and his teachings and his advice. He's the one who the king sent. If he was not sent by the king, if there was no interaction with the captain, this whole journey wouldn't have been started. So it doesn't make sense to fare through the journey away from his teachings or his guidance. The third group of people who don't even bother. Yeah, you said?
People who like get distracted by like trade and stuff.
Yeah, the dunya people. People who the flash takes them, 100%. The tidal wave of luxuries and food and drink and sex and everything in between completely engulfs them. To the point that they can't even stick their head out of the water. There is no water. This island is the only place there is, right? That was what they said. There is no other home. So when you tell them, like, you're spending the time building something that won't last, they can't even fathom that concept, right? You're chasing desires that won't fulfill you. They can't even, that goes in one ear, out the other. Their heart is overwhelmed. The Prophet ﷺ likened it to the overturned cup. It doesn't recognize good or evil except its desires. So it's overturned, meaning you can't fill it with water. Try to fill it with water, it just spills right back out. So these people are people who indulge to the point where truth, justice, right and wrong, is determined by what feels good, is determined by the here and now, and everything else takes the backseat. They completely indulge to the point of being engulfed by this tidal wave of the dunya, and they are no longer able to recognize good or evil. They're no longer able to function in the way that is coherent with their purpose. And likewise, when they come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, right, the metaphor of the king is, of course, the king of kings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that one is easy. They realize, they bite on their hands in regret, realizing that was all a waste of time. There's nothing to show for the homes, there's nothing to show for their trade, there's nothing to show for the purpose that they gave their lives. Because it wasn't in line with the purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And the fourth group, which word did we land last?
Deniers, like people that don't even.
Yeah.
So the kafirs could be, Muslims and kafirs could be dispersed amongst most of the groups. Of course, the first two groups are obviously Muslim people who worked and did good deeds. But like other than that, the other three categories, last two categories, was a total of four, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So the last two could be Muslims or kafirs, right? People indulge in the dunya, or people who, or whatever the fourth group is, will sort out. As for the first two groups, they're definitely Muslim, right? People who listen to the captain or try to for the second group and gather gems, either epically or satisfactory. And the third group is people who indulge in dunya, whether Muslim or kafir. It's not really, the details of their metaphor doesn't really necessitate that they be Muslim or kafir. But what did they do? Yeah.
They weren't where they were supposed to.
Yeah, so what's that metaphor for? No, they knew they weren't supposed to go. So it's not ignorance.
They purposely defied and went against.
Okay, so the third group was people of the dunya. What did they do wrong? They overindulged. So food, drink, trade, homes, luxuries. But the fourth group, yeah, you said?
The people who had no regard for the Akhirah.
You could argue the third group's the same. They just lived the island. They didn't care about the town. They didn't care about the king or anything else.
Is that like Shaitan like
And Mutakabirin, they know what's the right and the
Yeah,
wrong, but
right.
they insist to. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You guys did it together. You're on the right track. There are people who indulged in sins. Because the third group is not necessarily sinning. Like they're sinning by not fulfilling their purpose, but what they're doing is halal. They're eating, drinking, living, sleeping, building homes, but they're doing that at the expense of their real purpose. So whether they're Muslim or not, because the metaphor could go both ways, they completely disregarded the hereafter. They prepared nothing for it. So in terms of good deeds, charity, salah, they did nothing. So if it's a Muslim, their faith will save them, of course, but that doesn't mean, eventually they may have to serve a term in the hellfire because they've done no good deeds. They have not performed in a manner satisfactory to the king. In fact, they've completely ignored the purpose for which he sent them, and they did something else. Even though that thing in of itself may have been halal, right? Food, drink, and indulgence in halal luxuries. But they did it to the extent that it made them forget their purpose. So overall, that's a sin, and that's liable for punishment, even though the individual actions may have been halal. Dressing nice, having a nice car, having a nice home, having friends, eating, hanging out with them, and all done with the correct parameters, fully halal. But they did that at the expense of their purpose, right? So they lost sight of what's actually important, what they're supposed to be doing, and so they neglected their duties towards Allah. The fourth group now are people who indulge in the sins, the haram things. They insisted on the haram things. This is what they found enjoyment in, and they indulged to the extent of that took over their life. Everybody sins. Everybody falls short. Everybody makes mistakes, and for lengthy periods of time sometimes. That's human nature. Prophet ﷺ said we're all like that, and the best of us are those who repent. But these people were not people who made mistakes. They're people who insisted on that lifestyle fully. They indulged in that lifestyle till it became who they were. So the haram took over their lifestyle. It was dominated by haram things. Their food is haram. The way they earn money is haram. Their language, their relationships, they insist on the haram path in every single category.
These people that Allah Ta'ala stamp on their hearts,
Right.
and their hearts came black, from the green. There is no space for to return to Allah.
Yeah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all. Their hearts became black. The Prophet said when you do a good deed, it's a white mark stamped on your heart. And you do evil deeds, the black mark. And every day you're doing a mix, right? It's getting peppered with salt and pepper. But then until he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's heading towards one direction. Until it becomes completely white, no evil can touch it, or it becomes completely black and it recognizes no good. All it wants is haram. All it wants to do is evil. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all and our families along the way. So that's, and of course the island, the town where the king lives. I don't remember which side we're on, so whoever wants it. The town where the king lives.
Is it like going back to the king?
It's the hereafter.
Oh.
It's the akhirah.
Yeah,
Right? Because if the island's the dunya, then the town's the hereafter. Some important points is that we already mentioned a couple that he mentions here at the end, but regardless of what category they're in, regardless of their approach and their understanding of the island and why we're here and how important it was or whether we care or not, regardless of all of that, everybody leaves at the end of the day. People who built the homes and want to stay forever, and people who understood their purpose, they all leave when the captain calls. There's no one who can stay behind. There's no one who chooses when to go. That's an important concept as well in this metaphor, which is regardless of their status, of what they were doing, everybody's leaving. And that's very important to keep in mind. Right? That's very important what we were saying earlier with the heart softening. When you keep that in mind, that idea, what did it do for the first group? They wouldn't let them sleep. They wouldn't let them rest. They wouldn't let them enjoy luxuries as much as everyone else did. Not that these things are haram, but remember, it can clash with your purpose, and they didn't let that happen. That was done by the fear of leaving. Time is running out. We're here for 24 hours, the captain said. Another, I think, he doesn't mention here, but something that I noticed he says about the resort of the king. He says it doesn't have a door, so they break through. The haram takes an extra amount of effort to do very often. And you gotta, go out of your way, right? You gotta hide, you gotta contact people, sometimes you gotta do a little bit more to do haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it reprehensible, made it something that people naturally dislike if their fitrah is the sound, so that you can have more natural incentives to stay away from it, right? Let's say even if you didn't have, you didn't read this book or have Islamic knowledge or know the hadith that directly prohibits this or says the punishment for this or that, just by knowing it's wrong from your fitrah, it's a incentive or a deterrent from doing this action. When you kill that, you're breaking the door, right? When you insist on overcoming this barrier Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside of you to sin, you make the barrier a little lower. So instead of climbing it, now you can just jump over it, then you can just hop over it, then just a step over. And then the barrier is no longer there because your heart died. right? The Prophet ﷺ said that as well in another lengthy hadith. Like we said, remember we want to tie it with the source of hadith because this is a metaphor from Ibn Qudamah, but as you can see, all of it is tied to hadith because he's not just thinking there, daydreaming. This is from his knowledge of all these different sources of the Quran and hadith. So there's a lengthy hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that there is a straight path, and on the side of the path are multiple doors. And in front of each door is a curtain. At the head of the path is a collar that says, "Come forward." And behind each curtain is a collar as well that says, "Check this out, see what's behind you." And each time that the person who's trying to go to the collar at the front who says, "Come here," and he passes by a door and he hears, "Hey, check this out," the collar at the front says, No, don't. If you open this curtain, you're going to enter. Meaning you're not going to take a look, you're done. And the Prophet ﷺ explained the metaphor himself. He said that the collar at the front is the Quran, is the deen of Islam, so on and so forth. The path is the straight path of Islam. And the curtains are the prohibitions. And that collar, when it says, the path is Islam in the Quran, the collar is, he says, the conscience of every single Muslim, the dhamir that you have inside. It's a conscience, it's natural. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it part of our fitrah to make it harder to overcome that barrier that He made haram. Right? So, if we find, the point of all this is what? If we find the halal super easy and the haram super hard, switch that. If we find the halal super hard and the haram super easy, we got to ask ourselves, what did we do to our hearts? Right? What did we do to our own fitrah? How hard did I stab it and bury it that it no longer recognizes what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made natural? It's completely flipped. That's something that we should be very wary of. How wary are you of your heart? Are you aware of the conclusions and how they change as you get older and how you look at things, or just going with the flow? That's something that we should be introspective regarding. So if I used to find this reprehensible, and now I'm perfectly okay with it, or even worse, I promote it, what happened? What happened to my heart? Is that even correct? These are introspections and reflections that a lot of people just pass over. They don't even realize them. Decade in, decade out. You're at the perfect age for that. I assume that all of you are in your late teens or early 20s max. If even some of you look younger. This is a perfect time to be wary of your thoughts and your conclusions and how they change as you grow older. Now you begin to learn these things and recognize them. So now he begins with his advice. Now that he's done with the metaphor, he says, فَهَذَا تَقْرِيبُ مِثَالَ الدُّنْيَا. Oof, it's 9 o'clock. No one threw anything at me. So I'm going to summarize it here quickly because this is way over time. So this is exactly what he said. وَأَلْزِمْ قَلْبَكَ الْفِكْرِ. Keep this reflection going on in your heart. This is what we just said. That's his point in the metaphor. He says, keep reflecting. Who are you in this group, in this island? What are you doing with the time that you're here? Do you recognize that there's 24 hours left? There isn't 24 hours left, right? There's time that's already passed. The clock is ticking, right? 100% of our lives is not left. We don't know if it's 92 or 42 or 12 or 1. So this is what he wants you to do. Think of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, so that you can be grateful for them. Think of your sins so that you can seek repentance for them. And think of your shortcomings and how you shortchanged the dues that you owed Allah so that you can regret it. Right? This is his words. And think in the creations of Allah and His wisdoms so that you can know His greatness and His wisdom and you can feel it. And think in what is between your hands, what is in front of you, what is coming, meaning, so that you can get ready. And think in the wisdoms of everything that you need to learn, that you don't know now. So if you think, look, why is this? Why is that? Why is this ruling? Why does Islam teach us this? He says, think about that and go learn it now. Right? Stick to the captain's advice. See what he is saying. That's basically what the metaphor is. And then now he says, so these are the things that he wants you to consider. And now he says what he wants you to do. وَأَلْزَمْ لِسَانَكَ ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. And now adhere to the remembrance of Allah with your tongue. And calling Him in dua. And seeking His forgiveness. Keep your tongue busy in doing these things. And recitation of the Quran. Or seeking knowledge. Or teaching. Or calling others to do good or forbidding them from evil. Or reconciling between people who are fighting. He's trying to give you advice. Get busy. Gather some gems. Right? He's telling you what to understand and realize from my metaphor. And now what he wants you to do. Get busy. Start gathering gems. Why would you hear this metaphor, consider it, and just say, yeah, nice story? He's saying, I don't want you to do that. Keep your limbs busy with the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and focus on the obligations first, in their proper time, with their proper dues, because this is what the king wants you. right? The king is gonna, when you get back to the king, he's going to have specific requests. He's not going to say just any gems, right? There's specificity to the gems that he wants. This is what he's trying to say. So he's saying start with the obligations in their proper time, in the best way that you can fulfill them. Then after that, what does he say? Focus on. What do you think he's going to say? What's one level under? That's a good guess, but no. That's not what he says. That's generally true, but that's not what he says here. So you get 3 points. Any guesses? What is, he says, so the first thing that, so he says, reflect upon these things, everything we just mentioned. Keep your tongue busy with these things. He mentioned things, deeds of the tongue, and now he's saying deeds of the limbs. First, obligations in their most proper and complete form. Next, his advice. So he's now saying the most valuable gems in his opinion. What passes beyond yourself and benefits others. Was not just beneficial to you. The number one thing he thinks that you should do after the fara'id, after what Allah made obligatory, are things where the good is beyond just you. وَأَفْضَلُ ذَلِكَ مَا نَفَعَهُمْ فِي دِينِهِمْ. And the best of that is what helps them in their religious affairs. And then after that, he says the dunya as well, helping them in any through hardship or any needs that they may have. So it says begin with what Allah made obligatory, go learn that. Then after that, go help people. And then he says, and the best of helping people is to guide them and teach them about guidance. So this was his chapter on the dunya. Number one, it's an opportunity, so seize it. And number two, there's different categories. Which one will be? That's his point in chapter 1. Chapter 2 is mufsidat al-a'mal. So he's not telling you it's important to seize the opportunity of the dunya. There's different people in the approaches of the dunya. And then the second chapter is things that ruin your deeds. So you could be gathering gems, you could be working hard, and it could all go down the drain of the garbage. How? Find out next time, next week, inshallah, as we explore chapter number 2. Any questions, comments, feedback? All right. Jazakallah khairan for your attendance, everyone, and for your attention. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta,